How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Project Geekology. My name is Dakota, and I'm joined as always with
Anthony.
And today's our 88th episode. We're going to be covering Logan, the 2017 film starring Hugh Jackman. It's the third Wolverine film starring Hugh Jackman. Some might call it a trilogy, even though it's probably the most disjointed, solo trilogy of all time. They don't really connect at all, but we're going to be getting more into that in just a few moments. Let's briefly talk about what we've been up to this past week, and yeah, what are you up to, Anthony?
What have I been up to? I have been up to...
Nothing good.
Nothing good, yeah, man. Just being a nerd, playing games.
Pure evil.
Honestly, just doing my stuff, working on my projects, doing a bit of gaming.
Nice.
What
is the game that you've been playing the most of?
The game, so Steam they have their summer sale going on right now, which some of their best sales are going on at the moment, and I ended up buying, I bought a few really cheap games, and I think the most expensive one that I bought, which wasn't even expensive, it was $20, is the Suicide Squad game.
Oh, okay. Is that out?
Oh,
I didn't even realize that was out.
Dude, yeah, the Suicide Squad game has been out for a while, and it came out to some pretty dismal reviews. It's a live service game. It's one of those kind of looter shooters. You upgrade your weapons and stuff. And so, I get it. I see it. I can justify playing it at $20 though. It's not a bad game. It's
not for $25 for sure.
Dude, come on, man. I don't know if I would have spent $70 on it though. I'll be honest. There's definitely some, I guess, less than desirable aspects of it. And yeah, dude, why would you make this game a live service game? Makes no sense. Especially
now, for those of you who are listening who don't know what a live service game is, Anthony, explain it to us.
So a live service game is one of those games that you're pretty much on the internet all the time, and it's got the battle passes. Games like Overwatch and Destiny, those are live service games. Fortnite, to be specific, those are all live service games. They're on the internet all the time.
But those are fantastic games. So why is this not a good game for live service?
It's just not built like it. It shouldn't have been a live service game. This is coming from the same studio that we got these fantastic Batman games,
Right.
And even the less desirable one, which I know a lot of people had some gripes about Arkham Knight. I still have a lot of fun with Arkham Knight. It's dude, why did you guys go that route? And it makes it seem like it's a cash grab type of move. And so, it really shifted a lot for WB. WB doesn't want to do games anymore, really, because of that.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. So it's, it's just, there's some people there that, they make bad decisions. I really do think that a lot of these game studios, they need people to ground them. They need an actual, I don't know, people who pay people that aren't employees to come in and to be hey, look, we're gonna bounce this off and get the general consensus, because and if they do that, then they're not listening to them, because obviously a lot of people don't like this type of stuff. There's a there is a crowd for it, but
yeah, but you've been enjoying the Suicide Squad game, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's interesting. You gotta take down the Justice League, so
that's important. Yes.
Remember when we talked about the announcement of this game?
In our second episode, I believe.
Yeah, our actual, our first episode was introductory, and then, we covered.
Right.
And that was back in 2020?
Yeah, that was during COVID.
And then I think this game came out, let's see, Suicide Squad game. So this one came out in February of this year. So
okay, so it hasn't been super long, but it's been a while.
Right. We're coming up on, we were a little over 3 years at that point of announcement. So it's interesting. And also, speaking of Suicide Squad, I haven't watched it yet, but there's that anime that came out, the Suicide Squad isekai.
I didn't watch it, but I've heard that people are enjoying it. For the most part, people have their gripes, but I've heard that people are enjoying it, so I'm actually excited to jump in on that.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out.
Any other games outside of Suicide Squad that you've been dabbling in?
Dude, always, I decided to, I've been playing a bit of WoW. I'm back on that like, a little bit of a WoW kick. I might not play it every night, but I'll hop on and maybe level up one or two levels every time I hop on. I've been enjoying building up a mage. I'm playing a fire mage. Dude, let me tell you, World of Warcraft, especially like if you're not doing anything active like dungeoning or even like raiding. I mean, you can with a dungeon, like, like regular dungeons, not like a mythic one, but like, dude, it's like the perfect, like, just podcast game. Like, you can put something else and watch something as you kind of just grind away
Oh,
and
yeah,
quest.
yeah.
That,
Because the quests are fairly simple generally.
right. So,
Nice, man.
yeah,
Cool.
I enjoy that when I don't feel like being too engrossed into like a cinematic story, So,
Yeah.
no, I've been really enjoying that. How about you? Like, what have you been up to?
Past week has just been kind of hectic for me because I've been doing a bunch of random stuff, getting ready for a trip. I'm going to go to Florida for 2 weeks, your neck of the woods. I'll be in your neck of the woods for a little bit.
In the neck of the woods.
We'll definitely find some time to hang out. Between the time that this podcast releases and the next podcast, Anthony and I will probably have shared, I don't know, we'll drink a little bit, probably. We'll have a good time. I'm really excited. So I'm doing a week in the Miami area, which is where my family is from, and then doing a couple days up in Central Florida to visit my grandmother, like Central Florida, obviously, and then we'll do a couple days in Disney. So I'm excited about that.
It's wild. The last time you came down was in like February. So the fact that you're I don't think you've come to Florida this much in a year in a long time.
Yeah, well, my wife Jen, she got the Disney annual pass, so we're testing that out, seeing if it's actually like worth it. So this year is kind of like a test to see if it's viable, if it's worth it, if it's actually, still fun after going as often as we have, which isn't very often. It's maybe like once every 3 or 4 months. That's what I'll be doing in the next couple of weeks. So I'll be gone for 2 weeks, but we're recording 2 podcasts tonight so that we can make up for that a little bit. We're doing this episode about Logan, and then we're recording right after this an episode about Star Wars. Not just like any particular Star Wars, but a shorter episode on how to get into Star Wars and perhaps our love of Star Wars, where it originated, where it is now, stuff that, how to get into different aspects of the Star Wars universe, like gaming and comics and novels, perhaps. And yeah, so I don't think we've ever had a podcast where we've really like dived into that specifically and like, how to jump in a galaxy as big as Star Wars.
And I feel like, especially with that episode, I think it would be a good kind of launching point for future episodes like that, because there's so many other fandoms that we do enjoy that may seem a little confusing for some fans, because, I mean, believe it or not, we're making that Star Wars episode, but there are a lot of people out there that have not taken the dive into Star Wars.
You're telling me, bro. I get DMs all the time, maybe once a week, from random people who they know that I'm working on a Star Wars timeline, or I did work on a Star Wars timeline. And actually this past week I finally released the time saber, and I did a short video, maybe not that short, it's a 20-minute video on like how the time saber works and everything. And yeah, I'm going to be touching more on that in the next podcast that we record about, how to get into Star Wars, because I have a free version of the timeline that anyone can download. So we'll leave a link in the next podcast for that.
Right. Well, actually, we have. I posted the link for that YouTube in the last episode.
Oh, okay,
I'll
cool.
post it in this episode also, and then we'll post it in that upcoming episode.
We're posting it nonstop, guys. Nonstop.
Everywhere, but, all the time.
Yeah, and you're listening to this now. We've, at least I have seen episode 6 of The Acolyte. Anthony's a little bit behind on that, so he hasn't caught up. But we're not going to be talking spoilers about Acolyte or even like the original trilogy. I think we're going to try to stay away from spoilers as much as possible, just so that we give you guys the opportunity to, experience that podcast without having to worry about,
Right. Like, we don't want it to be a daunting episode. We want it to be an episode for, I would say, like, a range of different people, complete beginners to people who have indulged in Star Wars for a while, but may not know how to get into it with the reading material. So
Yeah, and there, like I was saying earlier, I still regularly get DMs about like, well, what do you recommend watching first? The prequels or the original trilogy? Should I add the shows into the mix? Should I make it a whole chronological thing? Should I add Solo and Rogue One and all that? And I think that's, it's a discussion that I feel like needs to be had because there are people genuinely curious. They see that it's such a huge phenomenon, kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, there are people who have never seen a Marvel movie. So, there are introductions that need to be made to help people nudge themselves into, experiencing these new worlds that are perhaps very daunting, like Star Wars, which has 11 or 12 films at this point, a whole bunch of shows, a whole bunch of comics. And anyway, we'll get into that in the next episode.
Absolutely.
And then after that, Anthony, you're going to be in Supercon, right?
Yes, I will have a convention that's going to be happening July 12th to the 14th. And so the episode following the Star Wars episode will be my kind of annual, because I've done episodes on Supercon before for the past couple of years, but while Dakota is away on vacation, it'll be a nice little mini-sode to cover my time at Supercon. And I'm pretty excited because I was telling Dakota before we started recording that the press pass for this year had Crunchyroll on it. I'm like, ooh, are we gonna have some?
It's sponsored by Crunchyroll, yeah.
Right, we got some Crunchyroll stuff going on, and I remember Crunchyroll having a thing at NYCC, so I'm hoping that they've got some going on in Supercon. So I will keep y'all updated as far as that. Hopefully they have something going on and I'll remember, but like, yeah, they did this. But if they don't, and I don't say anything about it, that's because nothing happened. So, but yeah.
Should we jump into our discussion of Logan?
Logan? Yes.
The Logan. So, this is an amazing film. Like, how did this happen? How did they make such a good movie?
By making it not feel like an X-Men film.
Yeah, it's one of the most bizarre, but it is still an X-Men film.
It's an X-Men film
to its core,
right? It doesn't feel like everything that we've gotten up to this point. It's a mature film, dude. I think, and I don't know if you've read anything as far as this, but I feel like Deadpool maybe did a lot for this film. Deadpool was kind of like, it was like, oh, people love R-rated films. Let's see what we can do with Wolverine. And they picked a really cool storyline.
Yeah, really, really briefly, I just want to mention that you might hear fireworks going off behind me.
And me.
Okay, yes, it is currently July 3rd. We got for whatever reason, my town's doing their 4th of July celebration a day early. So
3rd of July.
I can sometimes see my audio recording peaking a little bit, or not peaking, but like I can see the wavelengths whenever there's a bigger boom. But so I apologize about that. But you were saying that Deadpool opened the door to rated R superhero movies.
I feel like it helped urge that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And at the time, Deadpool became the highest grossing rated R movie ever. Like, it was by a long shot at that point. I don't think Logan quite hit that mark, even though it definitely deserved to get that same level of, box office gross. But yeah, I think whether or not this movie was it was always going to be, a darker movie. You can't really do this story without it being super dark and moody, and it may as well be a rated R movie. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, it's that old man Logan storyline.
Yeah. So we're kind of thrown into this movie with Logan. He's hit rock bottom.
Yeah, he's down bad.
He is down bad. He's not healing like he used to. He does have healing properties, but his body is not healing like it used to. Like it's slower. And we learn later in the movie that this is all due to the adamantium in his body that's been slowly poisoning him.
Yes.
Which I thought was a really interesting twist because, he's had it for... I think this movie takes place in 2029. So he got it in the 80s. So it's almost 40-ish, little over 40 years later. He's starting to really die from this thing that's poisoning him from the inside out.
And I feel like, his regeneration helped a lot with that. If this was a person or a mutant without regeneration, that had this adamantium in their body, they probably would have died a lot quicker. So I feel like the regeneration really had slowed that process. But yeah, Logan, he's not looking good. He's aging faster than he usually does. He's really feeling his injuries now. It takes a while. And
age is starting to creep up to him. Like, he has always been immortal, basically. Like, he cannot die unless he's shot in the head with an adamantium bullet, which a couple films ago, he was shot in the head with an adamantium bullet, and that all that bullet did was delete his memory.
And so now we're back to the adamantium bullet, like, being the way to go.
That's it. Okay, so this is really funny. If you haven't seen if you haven't listened to our video. So if you haven't listened to our podcast on X-Men Origins Wolverine, the first of the 3 solo Wolverine movies, there's a really ridiculous, like, plot contrivance where the only way to kill Wolverine is to shoot him in the head with an adamantium bullet. And then later in the movie, someone says something along the lines of, I don't think that'll kill him. And basically the doctor somehow knows that if you shoot him in the head with this, he'll lose his memory, which he does after being shot in the head with an adamantium bullet. So X-Men Origins Wolverine, adamantium bullet. That's why he doesn't have any memory of his time in Alkali Lake and all that. It's crazy. It's like an actual crazy story thing.
It is crazy. And then, like, you have the Wolverine where there's the Silver Samurai, and it was this whole suit and, like, sword made out of adamantium. But the only way that the adamantium could really, like, be damaged is if it was, like, superheated.
Yes, which in the first, or in X2, if you go back to X2, they literally say once it's cooled down, you can never remelt it. Like, that's literally, like, part of adamantium's properties.
Yeah.
Like, it just cannot be destroyed. So there's a whole bunch of adamantium nonsense in these X-Men movies that I feel like they really got to nail down and when they make the jump to the MCU.
Well, I do feel like adamantium, like, I mean, if that's the case, then how can you melt it to begin with?
So it's an alloy. So it's 2 metals, it's more than 1 metal melted together to bond into a compound metal that, for whatever reason, just becomes indestructible. Like, you can't you can't break it, you can't melt it, it's just the perfect metal, I guess. I don't know.
Except if it's super heated or shot with other adamantium.
Yes. Then it's, which also, like, how wouldn't that damage the gun? Like, if it's an adamantium shell and bullet, maybe the shell itself isn't adamantium, but, like, the bullet itself might be.
Oh,
but either way, like,
the casing might not be. You just need the gunpowder in the casing is really just pushing this adamantium tip out and creating the damage. No, you're right. I mean, there's just so much, like, ridiculousness going on. But yeah, so aside from the ridiculousness of adamantium, did you have anything else to say?
No, I was gonna just segue, but I do like the fact that in this movie he has
whiskey claws.
In this movie he is carrying literal, like, adamantium bullet, like, that's his way out, basically. Like, and he's just, like, waiting for the day when he has literally nothing left to live for. As it stands, he still has a couple people he's living for. He's trying to make money to buy Charles Xavier the medication that he needs to stop him from having seizures, which is a whole other like interesting, like, can of worms that they opened up.
Yeah. One of the strongest minds in the world with Alzheimer's. Dude, that's...
And seizures. Alzheimer's and seizures. It's very scary. Like,
the Alzheimer's,
no one's ever really thought about that.
The Alzheimer's isn't, like, what's the worst part. It's the seizures. That's when it just, like, gets all buck wild. But yeah, Logan, he wants to save up that money because he wants to. And it makes sense why he wants to do this. He wants to get a boat and take Charles out to sea. And honestly, like, it's kind of protecting. He's, like, doing it in a way to protect them and to protect people around him. Because when these seizures happen, like, it affects a huge radius of people.
Yeah, so we see it we see it a couple times throughout the movie, but the most prominent scene is when he's in the hotel in Vegas,
Yes.
and you see everybody in the hotel when he's having that seizure.
They're like frozen, but
Completely,
they're suffocating too. Like they're paralyzed, but they're suffocating.
and you could tell that they're in excruciating pain at
Yeah.
the same time. You know, like their eyes are scrunched up because, you know, just like their head's basically exploding because this guy's, you know, having this crazy seizure. And they mentioned that this has happened before in Westchester. There was a Westchester incident with 600 people affected and several casualties, including, I think they said 7 X-Men.
They did.
It's so sad. Like, for a character like him who spent his entire life to help these mutants, like, find a path for themselves, then to be that guy who, because of an accident or because of failing health, caused their deaths, that's gotta kill him. And that's probably, you know, like, that put his dementia, this Alzheimer's, probably on a super track because he didn't want to remember it, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, this entire film, it's sad, dude. This is a sad movie.
I think I cried like twice at least, you know?
It's
like
just,
when
yeah, man.
we're getting like full spoilers. Obviously, Logan dies.
Dude,
Logan
yeah.
dies.
I mean, like, I mean, at this point, this movie's been out since 2017. You know.
Yeah. But when
But like, you know that it's gonna happen. Like, you feel it. It's
the entire movie is leading up to it.
It's foreshadowed throughout the entire film. Like, you know it's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when. I mean, and then they try to throw in like little like bits of hope here and there with the introduction of Jackie. I mean, Laura.
Yes, Daphne Keane, probably best known for her work as X-23 in this movie, Logan. She's a character in The Acolyte, and yeah, I don't want to spoil anything,
Right?
show, but she had a pretty great scene. I'm trying to come up with something punny to do with hole punchers, but I'm not gonna. No, but she had a really cool scene in episode 5 of The Acolyte. Really awesome scene. I'm not going to talk too much about that. But anyway, what do you think of Daphne Keane as X-23?
Absolutely, like, fantastic.
Such a good character. Such a good actress.
So good. And like, you know, X-23 being a clone of Wolverine, and then like, you know, later, like in the comics, she becomes like an adoptive daughter, so he pretty much like adopts himself, you know, but it's like a female him, you know. And dude, like, she has the mannerisms like down packed. Like, you can tell that, like, yes, she is related to Wolverine in some kind of way, because she has like that anger, that, I mean, dude, she's a beast.
Fury. She has fury.
Beast. And like, you see the way that she fights, and like how like nimble and flexible and all the flips, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, she's like insane. You know, Wolverine is crazy. He has training too, but like, dude, like, I mean, he's like brute strength. She's got a little bit of that, but she's also got a lot of like quickness too. And, you know, she has like the toe claws too.
Yeah, so she has 2 claws in her hands, but she has the single like toe knife in that like juts out of her like her toes, I guess. I don't know.
And it sounds ridiculous, but then you see the way that she uses it, and you're like, yeah.
Okay, yes, it's vicious. You know, she's kicking. She's kind of like a cat. You know.
Yeah, because she's like crawling
that, like,
all over the place, and like, just like flipping people. Yeah, dude, she is like a proficient fighter, and she's like 12.
Yeah, fantastic performance by Daphne Keane. You really feel that this is like an actual character who needs help throughout the entire movie. So the basic premise with her is we find out that she has been smuggled away from a facility in Mexico where they are making New Mutants, because for whatever reason there has been no New Mutant births in 25 years. So since basically the 3rd X-Men movie, around that time. And this woman who worked at the facility, a Mexican woman, took this girl, Laura, under her wing and is looking to find Logan to take her to this place in North Dakota, which she calls Eden. We find out later that this Eden was an actual like location that they found in an X-Men comic book. And I like in this universe that like the X-Men have become kind of someone's cartoonized or like comic bookified these real life characters into comic books. And throughout the entire movie, you know, after Logan finds out that this is like not a real place, he is super adamant about not taking her. But Laura is extremely passionate about, like, we have to go here. We have to go. And it just kind of becomes like a, all right, begrudgingly drag Charles Xavier and Laura all the way to North Dakota, so that we find out later this is a campground that the other kids in the facility have basically like commandeered, you know, as a meetup to cross the border into Canada, where they have some sort of safe haven, which I think is a great concept. You know, like it goes to show like that kind of, you know, life finds a way, that even though mutants have been functionally extinct for 25 years, there is hope for the next generation of mutants. And, you know, even though the X-Men, after Wolverine dies, are gone, you know, their legacy lives on in these kids. And I love that. I love that message. I think it's really cool. When Laura, you know, like moved the cross into an X to like symbolize that this was an X-Men, oh, my heart, dude. I was weeping on my couch.
Yeah, dude, that it was. And then you see, you know, in this film, Logan goes from this place not having much to fight for to like having something to fight for with Laura, you know, and he kind of goes from like this, oh, you know, this is a burden, you know, she's a burden, to like, you know, yeah, like you start to see kind of like that dysfunctional parental role kind of pop in. Especially that there's that one part where they're at the gas station and she's like kind of like going around and like picking stuff up, you know, like doing kid stuff, right?
Eating chips. Yeah.
And, you know, like the guy's like, no, like you got to pay for that. And she goes to run out. He steps in front of her and then she's like about to just like massacre this guy. And then like Logan pops in like, no, like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry for her. Like, dude, like that was not normal.
No, but my favorite part of that interaction is that like while he's on the ground, Logan's like, hey, do you got any phone chargers? And then he just steals a phone charger.
Yes. And a cigar.
I love it. What's kind of a difficult thing about this movie is that like there's a lot of good people that we meet along the way that are kind of caught in the crossfire of this good deed of taking Laura to her promised land, basically. And you have all of these characters, like there's that the family. I think Nate is the son. I'm looking at the cast right now. The Munsons. You have Will Munson, Nate Munson, and the mother, I forget her name, Catherine is what the casting call is saying.
Yeah, this part of the movie was definitely really sad.
You know, even though like they were having a great time with these people, they were having dinner with them. Charles was on his best behavior. You know, he was living large. You knew it wasn't going to end well for anybody involved, you know, just because people around Wolverine, when stuff gets good, you know, when stuff gets lighthearted, stuff tends to go downhill. And that's exactly what happens.
Man can't catch a break.
Man cannot catch a break. Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about the interaction that he had with the father in that scene. You know, like he helped the father fix that pipe that was being sabotaged by, I guess, whoever owns that farm or whatever. And he gets in the way of these bullies to... Or not bullies, but like, you know, they were threatening this guy's livelihood, whatever.
I mean, no, you're right though. I mean, they are bullying this man, you know, like they're messing with their water.
Yes, it is bullying, but like it's a little worse than that, because they're actually like, you know, they're bringing guns to the exchange. They're
right. Like
they're clearly bribing him and holding something against him. But, you know, Wolverine makes quick work of them. And as soon as they get home, basically, like, these people turn around. So the bullies, the people who were threatening this guy's livelihood, come back to his house looking for blood. And they gathered more men. And just around that time, the people from Alkali show up, and it just becomes a whole other issue. But, like, I want to ask you, like, what do you think would have happened had those Alkali people not shown up at that exact moment? Like, would Wolverine and this family have been able to escape that unscathed? Had you know, those military men not also shown up at the same time?
That's a good question. I mean, there is a possibility. Who knows? Maybe Charles could have used some of his magic if he had been woken up or something. Not magic, but, you know, kind of what he did, because like they meet this family by them helping, because there's like kind of like an incident on the highway where there's like, kind of an accident, but not anybody getting smashed. And this family, they have horses, and the horses get like kind of, the cage breaks and they get let out. And so Charles, he uses his ability to kind of like, or his powers to like calm the minds of the horses and kind of bring him in line back to the family. And
that was a cool scene.
Yeah, that was cool.
I like that. I like what he says in the vehicle, like, Logan, should we help them? And then he goes, someone will come along. And then he says, someone already has, talking about them. I love that. I love stuff like that with Charles.
Yeah, it's like, Charles is dealing with a lot. He's losing his faculties. He's got these seizures going on, and he's got a lot weighing down on him because he does know about what happened. He does have memories of the Westchester incident, and he holds a lot of that on to him. And the fact that he still has like this real good nature to want to help, like, it's still Charles. You can still see the Charles that, like, especially these movies that we've grown up to and watched. That is the same Charles. It's just, he's losing it a bit.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I had something I wanted to say. I think, speaking about, like, these characters, they're aging, they're nearing the end of their lives altogether. It's almost, and I think this was meant to be this way, where, like, they purposely aged up the characters to a point where they were no longer, like, fully functional mutants or humans, And I think it was a kind of a meta discussion on, like, what happens to your heroes over time. Like, even a meta discussion about actors. Like, these actors have been playing this role for going on 20 years at this point. By this movie, it was 2017, so they had been actively playing these roles for 15 to 17 years. And that's a long time for a role, like a single role of theirs, And in most cases, that doesn't ever happen, like most, I think that's at that point longer than any single character has currently been in the MCU, or single actor has currently been in the MCU. And this whole movie is kind of built around this concept that, like, eventually you gotta let go. You gotta let go of your heroes. Even though, we're gonna see Logan again soon. And, Hugh Jackman is 55 now, a little bit older, but, like, he's still got the will to play the character. So I'm excited to see what they do with that and how they kind of work around what happened in this movie. But it is a really just powerful concept because, even though you have a character like Wolverine, who's technically immortal, if the writer wants to kill him off, like, the writer can kill him off. And that's exactly what they do here. James Mangold does a fantastic job of, like, showing mortality, even for the people we look up to, and, like, how messy that could be.
Right. And with the way that Marvel is going now with, like, the whole multiverse stuff, you can always, like, pull this person back in,
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. And that's exactly what they're doing, It's amazing that, like, Hugh Jackman has been in this role for so long, but he's beloved, like, he's not a very, all right, don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic Wolverine. I think he was built for that role, but on paper, prior to there being any X-Men movies, have you just been a comic book reader, he's too tall. He's not stocky enough. He's not Canadian. There's a bunch of stuff that Hugh Jackman doesn't necessarily fit the role for Wolverine, but he makes the role his own, and people have loved that, and I think he gets the character, he gets the anger, and I think he's also, like, a little too good looking for Wolverine, because Wolverine isn't technically a good looking character in the comics. So it's just kind of funny how, people tend to fall in love with these actors playing these characters to the point where, like, it's very hard to let go.
Yes.
And it will be interesting when, even though this was technically Hugh Jackman letting go of the character, we as fans didn't let him, in a way, which is why he's back as,
it is tough. And I totally get what you're talking about as far as, like, the looks of Hugh Jackman, but I feel like he was passable enough to make it work. Right. And then everything else kind of came into play, and that's what made it, like, kind of rounded out. It was like, okay, there was, the clay was there, the mold was there, but it wasn't really filled out until like the performance came in, and he totally like made that character his own, and he made it believable that he is Wolverine. And dude, he kills it.
Yeah. And, going along those lines of this being like a meta discussion of like watching your heroes age as, real life takes its toll. It's interesting that they decided to go with a clone of Wolverine who looked like what Hugh Jackman looked like during his first movie, or, the X2, that era of Wolverine, they brought back, and they did such a good job with the CGI on the young Wolverine. Even though you could tell it was like a de-aged version of Hugh Jackman, it still looked fantastic.
It looked crazy. That fighting was insane. His entrance is a heartbreaking moment, and this clone of Logan kills Charles, and it is so sad. You feel for Logan because there's a moment he's carrying him and he's like, it wasn't me, like, remember,
yeah, he doesn't want Charles' last moments to be
that friend
he
kills.
Betrayed him.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally forgot about that until you brought it up, even though I just watched it yesterday. But
yeah, it was
what a good scene.
Yeah, it was such a good scene. And like it was so sad because the family gets massacred, and like the last moments of the husband is like not him trusting Logan,
Yeah,
like,
literally in this movie, no good deed goes unpunished. Like everyone who does a good thing doesn't get out. Like only the kids, basically, which I'm happy about. I'm happy that the kids, and some of those kids had some really cool mutant powers.
They really did, and like they led up to some really cool like collaborative moments.
Yeah, what they did to the one guy, what's his name? Hold on, let me pull up the casting sheet one last time. Donald Pierce. I don't even know if they actually say his name in the movie, but his character, played by Boyd Holbrook, gets like such a gruesome death where like all the kids use their powers on him at once. Like he's like pulled into the ground, he's frozen, he's burned, he's like wood chipped to death, he's electrocuted. It's literally like everything all at once.
Yeah, dude. It was really such a like delight to watch this movie because I hadn't seen it. I think the last time I actually saw this movie was in theaters.
I think I'm like in that same boat. I might have watched it just after it became available on streaming or something, but that we're talking 2018 at the latest. Like it's been a long time, and I think because it's not a happy movie. This is not a comfort movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is so good, and I think this is a movie that I'll be revisiting more often now that I have revisited it.
Right. You get some like really sad closure on some characters.
Some great closure too. I really love the scene right before Charles is killed by the fake Wolverine, where he kind of
the faux Wolverine, Nega Wolverine,
Nega Scott. Yeah, I love that moment because he kind of there's a lot of closure for that character right in that moment, but it's ripped away as we, the audience, realize that it's not actually Wolverine he's talking to. And
dude,
we haven't talked about Caliban yet.
Caliban.
He was also a character in X-Men Apocalypse, and he died in that one also. So the timelines are all really confusing in the X-Men universe. Right. I haven't even like bothered wrapping my head around it, just because like I know someone already has, and I'll just take their word for it because it's nonsense. Like
I'm assuming that Logan has nothing to do with the James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender series of movies.
So I think you're right. And the reason I think you're right is because early on, Charles Xavier says, you will meet people at the Statue of Liberty. And Logan goes, Statue of Liberty was a long time ago, talking about the first movie, the first X-Men movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
So I think this is a continuation of what happened in the first 3 X-Men movies, basically.
Kind of like caps it off with like a unofficial 4th movie. But like I guess they didn't want it to die off because, there was a lot of people that really didn't care for The Last Stand. So maybe they're like, let's give it its justice and kind of cap this off,
Yeah. I am curious what happened between The Last Stand and this movie that stopped mutants from happening, from like being born. Because there is that storyline in X-Men The Last Stand, where there's a kid who negates mutant powers in the vicinity, and there was like a vaccine that was created.
Oh yeah, Leech.
Yes, there was a vaccine created for mutants with Leech's blood to stop the mutant gene from, surfacing. But we don't really know what happened after that, besides the fact that Alkali, the company that originally, gave him the metal claws, they're behind the fact that there are no mutants. Richard E. Grant, he takes the credit for like stopping that from happening, and he does it like super casually. It's a really weird line, but I don't have an answer. I don't have like a maybe this happened, but it's an interesting development in this timeline that for whatever reason there's no mutants left, and the rest of the mutants are just dying off slowly.
Yeah, and I feel bad for Caliban. He gets kind of like dragged along to track down Wolverine and company, and he goes out like a champ. He takes out that Alkali truck. He's in a way, and you know what, like I guess in a way for him, he's like, they're not gonna stop trying to track him down, and they were just gonna continue to torture him. So like, I mean, it was,
and it wasn't gonna end good for him.
Yeah,
like
they're probably gonna kill him.
Yeah. So no, he went out with style. Anthony, is there anything else you want to talk about with Logan?
You mean Logan? I'm trying to think.
Where does this rank the X-Men movies for you? And why is it below X-Men Origins Wolverine?
That one's like top of all the Wolverine movies. Then it's Logan, and then it's the Wolverine,
Yes, the Wolverine. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, Logan is probably, I think you and I agree that this is bar none the best of the X-Men movies. So
yeah, man, like very strong storyline, very strong writing, very strong acting,
and direction.
Casting,
like it was a vision. They had a singular vision that they were creating with this story. They didn't deviate from it at all, and you can tell it. It comes across in the narrative, and everything that they wanted to showcase, they did. And sometimes you can tell in movies that are like bigger budget blockbuster stuff, like a lot of the MCU movies, whatever, they're built by committee. They're built by a think tank of individuals. This was the brainchild of James Mangold. This was his idea of like how to end the Logan story, and he did such a good job. It's a truly phenomenal film. Mangold also recently did the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which I liked. A lot of people didn't for whatever reason. And he's doing the Dawn of the Jedi movie for Lucasfilm, like the early, like 25,000 years ago Dawn of the Jedi movie.
Ooh.
So
hopefully
I'm
that
excited.
one comes out really well.
Hopefully it comes out soon because I need it. Yeah, so thank you guys for listening to us here for our 88th episode of Project Geekology. Be sure to check out our next episode, especially if you've never watched Star Wars and you are interested in joining, or if you are a fan of Star Wars and you want to expand your reach in the galaxy far, far away in terms of other tie-in media. We're going to be talking about that all in our next episode next week. Thanks, guys.
If you want to reach us on our socials will be in the show notes. So go and check us out. Join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you all. And Dakota's time saber whip thingy is going to be in those show notes. If you want a free copy, go and pop by and watch this video and get your copy of the time saber. And yes, if you are interested in hopping into Star Wars and you have not, go and give our next episode a listen when that comes out, or if it's out already. But whenever you will listen to this, go and check it out. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Bye, y'all.
The Wolverine, but sad.
The Logan.
The Logan.